Okay, so welcome back. Now, again, we're talking about religious experience, epistemology of religious experience. And remember, the best way to think about epistemology is how do you know what you know? And religious epistemology, how do you know what you know about religion? So the first one was voices, visions, and the prophetic call. Then enlightenment, and now the third is mystical experience. And this is often shares the same root word as mysticism. Now, mystical experience, this is being lost in the absolute and a lessening of self. And it's often referred to as extinguishing one's ego. Now, mystical experiences happen in many different ways. The visual to the right is a portrayal of how many mystical experiences happen in the Christian tradition. There are different men and women who choose to serve God as monks or nuns, and what many of these people do is that they in essence become hermits. They spend their lives alone in a very basic primitive cell, fasting and praying, and then they have an encounter with the divine that's mystical in nature. In other words, it doesn't fit the categories of the prophetic commissioning experience. And what happens with these mystical experiences for these men and women, they become lost in God. Their self, if you remember that term from an earlier chapter, becomes less and less until it becomes extinguished. And then that man, that woman, becomes almost part of the divine. I know, and when you hear about mystical experiences, it's really hard to talk about. And if you were to ask someone about the mystical experience that that person has gone through, it's common for that person to say, I can't tell you because there's no words that I can use to relate and explain this experience. Now, the visual to the left is of serpent handling or snake handling. This happens in certain Protestant denominations. It's common in the American South up into the Appalachian Mountains, the southern parts there, where these men and women will handle poisonous snakes, rattlesnakes, copperheads, water moccasins, and it becomes a mystical experience for them. And what happens is that their self becomes lessened and gradually becomes extinguished. So this is what's referred to as a mystical experience. Now, the last slide, in case you're curious, this has been a short chapter talking about epistemologies of religion. And again, epistemology is how do you know what you know about religion? Those commissioning experiences, those are associated with the prophetic call. Enlightenment, that happens with sage-based faiths. Then we have S-static versus N-static event. And you should be able to match those with the different examples. And remember that N-static, the E-N-S-T-A-T-I-C event, those happen within. And those happen and associated with enlightenment, whereas S-static, the E-S-T-A-T-I-C event, those are associated with commissioning experiences. And then lastly, the mystical experience. So again, the epistemology of religion, how do we know what we know? Commissioning experiences, enlightenment, and mystical experiences, or mysticism. So, as always, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.